classroom to experience effective instructional practices. During this experience, teachers will have the opportunity to talk about instruction and best practices. It is a powerful professional growth practice for educators where those who are visiting classrooms are reflecting on instructional practices and the impact on student learning using a defined rubric, which we just talked about, that outlines research-based best practices. Paragraph 2, Heather Sharp.
The teachers and administration of LUSD believe in the continual growth of effective teaching practices. Instructional practice should be shared so that teachers can improve and reflect on their own practice. Walking and talking instruction is one tool to promote professional growth in instructional practice. Gendering.
I already knew that was coming. I was ready. The role of the visitation teams is to be reflective, to look at instructional practice, glean evidence of impactful student learning, then collaborate through structured professional discourse. The ultimate goal is to reflect on one's own practice to create a culture of continual improvement. James.
Those engaging in walking and talking instruction are the primary beneficiaries of the process. The informed thinking the process generates relates to professional growth needs and the needs of LUSD. The rubric data from the classroom visits will be aggregated.
On to the rubric. So if you put the rubric in front of you, let's review the rubric, and then we'll talk a little bit about that. So if you look at the rubric at the top, it says Walking and Talking 2.0, and then there's a grayed out line that has boxes that you can check when you're in your 10-minute visit. And those boxes are they using adopted curriculum? Are they doing small group instruction? Are they doing group work? Are they doing a lab or investigation? Are they using non-adopted materials, supplemental materials, etc.? And then the date. Notice there's no name, no grade level, nothing of the sort at the top of the sheet. We don't want to identify people. We're just in the classroom to see instruction, right? And learn from the instruction that we see. So then on the left side, you'll note that it starts with the word vibe. Does everybody see that? And work your way down, it says SMO, student engagement, CFU, and if you turn to the back, student discourse, and intentional planning. Those are the areas that we are looking at. Now, if you turn it back over to the front and move over to the right, it says there's a 1, and it says, what evidence is there of vibe in the classroom? That's where you take your notes as somebody that's visiting the classroom. So you'll have one of these per visit, per classroom visit. So you can write all over it, mark on it, put your thoughts down.
So here we have our objective. Now, some words are going to be big, and that's okay. We're going to talk about them. So students will provide details by adding adverbs in a sentence. Now remember, we've already talked about adverbs, okay? And adverbs is how someone does something. Okay, so let's try to remember what some of those adverbs are really quickly. Okay, so you're going to look at Mrs. Quick. See your eyes. Awesome. All right, now show me a blink. Good. Now show me how you're going to blink quickly. Oh, excellent blinking. Okay. Now I want you to blink slowly. Oh, very good blink. So notice we still did blinking, but we did it quickly and we did it slowly. Those words are adverbs. It's telling us how we're doing our actions, okay? So we're going to use adverbs in a sentence. Now remember, in English, we don't just speak English, we also listen, we also read it, and we're going to write it. So we're going to add these adverbs. We have read adverbs, okay, in our story. We are going to practice speaking our adverbs. We listen for our adverbs, but today the focus is going to be when we write our adverbs, okay? So, when we write our adverbs.
For his son. So today we're going to develop our own opinions about whether or not education is as valuable as Kino thinks it is. So I'm going to come around with a quote for each of your group members, for each table group. Each of your group members needs a pen or a pencil, okay? Because you're all going to take a turn at recording your thoughts. You have 2 minutes per quote. So, in your group, whoever is person A, you're going to read the quote. Right now, there are no responses on it, so person B, you're going to miss out on this round. Person C, you're going to lead the discussion and discuss. Does your group agree or disagree with the quote on your paper? And person D, you're going to write down what your group decides. Okay? Question?
You write down on the quote.
Like on the piece of paper. Yep. So the little quote is right there at the top, but there's a ton of blank space. You're gonna write it small enough so that you don't take up the whole paper, because you're gonna pass these around at the next round. Okay? So you're gonna have 2 more minutes to talk about the new quote in front of you. I want to point out, person B, you actually have a job now. Person A, you're gonna read the quote, but person B, you're gonna read what the first group wrote. Okay? 2 minutes, ready, set, go.
So they were pre-selected instructional strategies. They were groups, different groups. So we will consider them instructional strategy, or
Each one of the activities at the group, I would say, not necessarily the group themselves. So what choices did she make to have at this small group, this small group, this small group?
so we'll consider that as instructional strategy, right?
It could be, or the fact that she's using small
Yeah,
group
she was
centers.
choosing to have the center, she was choosing to have them count and use manipulatives.
She was
Those are
choosing to have her
strategies.
small group.
Right.
Student grouping for instruction. I'm looking at bridging, but differentiation was also there, I could see, because there were different activities. But again, points to check for understanding. But then how can the teacher be at each and every group? Like, how can she, again, the same thing, check for understanding, how can she do that?
Well, and that's where we talked about had they had cards and the kids were checking with each other and she was checking in. She's not gonna be able to be at every group. So then you say, okay, what is she checking for understanding on her group? Because that should be the most powerful group in the room.
Right.
And if we compare that most powerful group, hopefully, to the objective,
Right.
did we see checking for understanding towards that objective? And then the kids have opportunities
Reinforcing that.
to do their own checks for understanding.
It's up, that's at your desk to help you on your sprint. I know, we already talked about that people are gonna come in and watch you guys learning and working. William, I need you to pull your chair all the way in.
It's this.
Alright, what about SMO?
They were posted, I noticed they were I will or I can statements, but they didn't show how you can, like, what are they gonna do to them.
But she had a strong ELA,
Yes.
SMO, because it has the skill and the expected product to
Right.
show that their mastery. Unfortunately, with the math, and we were there to observe math, I was wondering, like, okay, like, it was just missing that last piece, like, after they model, then what?
Or maybe she builds on it like what was modeled for us today at the
Write it
office.
together.
But, you know, they're just doing their sprints first and then she would model the second part.
But for what we saw, if we say
Right.
that it's missing or incomplete some parts of it, then
I
we
would
would
say
have
it's
to say
emerging.
emerging.
Back and enjoyed our visits. What we'd like to do at this point is have a conversation about what we saw and kind of our feelings about what we saw with some criteria in place. And that is, we don't talk about the school we visited, we don't talk about a classroom we visited. We don't say, I went into 4th grade and I saw math and this and that and the other. We don't do that. What we do is we speak in vague terms about what we saw. I went into a classroom today and I saw students that were organized in quads and they did a great A-B partner share, and they shared out with their peers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? I'm not identifying what the course was, who the person was, things like that. Now, The reason we do this is because the purpose of this process is for the people in this room to learn from seeing other teachers, right? Not to necessarily critique other teachers, right? We're learning from the visits that we had in the classrooms. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, good. So the other thing that I'll do is I'll call on people, but I'll also ask for volunteers. If I don't get volunteers, then I'm going to call on people. And then what I'm going to do is that person will then call on another person. And that usually ends up in a battle between Heather and Ryan and James, but maybe we'll call in some other people today. Okay? So let's start with the general feelings of what we saw on campuses today, because it's always a nice experience to go to someone else's campus and go, oh, wow, they have this, and wow, look at this, they have that, and get your general feel for the visits today. Then we'll go into more specifics on the walking and talking protocol. All right? So any volunteers for what you saw today? Yes, sir.
What I noticed is the general vibe of all the classrooms that I visited at the site I went to, it was positive. Like, kids were excited to do what they were doing, they were working together. As soon as I walked in there, I already just kind of had a smile on my face just because they looked excited about what they were doing. So,
Nice. Good feedback. Thank you. Anyone else?
We saw a lot of intentional planning. Clearly, everyone had a plan in mind and clearly articulated to students. Students understood routines and procedures, and so everybody, just organizationally, we saw some great classrooms, and students instructional minutes were really utilized well because everyone knew what they were doing. That was impressive.
Nice. Thank you. Anything else?
I saw a variety of checking for understanding techniques. So, putting your thumb on your nose and then you say the response, or whispering to yourself and then saying it to the ceiling. It was creative to see that. And then also too, seeing students checking for understanding their own work. So in one classroom we had, I don't know what she called it, a push in.
It was a push and appraise, yes.
A push and appraise, and students were each in their own centers, and they wrote down a praise on a Post-it note and put it on that work. So then the next group goes into that workstation, sees the praise that was put on, and one of them said, great job on getting the question correct, but show your work. So they're leading themselves, which was cool.
Was the push a suggestion? Is that what the push part was?
Yeah.
I like that. Push and praise, kind of like what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And vibe can be something that you walk in, you immediately feel, and sometimes it's something that you look for, and you try to say, well, is that a good vibe or is it not? So let's talk about what we saw when it comes to vibe out there in the classroom. Any volunteers? You're going to volunteer before you get called. You're smart. Okay, so Irene, you're going to comment, and then you pick the next person.
All right. So across the classes that we were able to visit, and campuses in general, a very, very positive vibe. You can tell there was an easy rapport between the students themselves as peers, but also between the teacher or the paraprofessionals and the students. So the kids felt safe, they felt comfortable asking questions, they felt safe taking risks and things like that. So it was a very, very positive vibe at work. All right?
Girl.
We saw a lot of strong objectives that were at the rigor of the standard, and the teachers were using the academic language that was aligned with the standard. So we maybe didn't see them going over there and reading off of it. You could tell though that it was constant interaction with just the verbal communication with the students.
So the kids knew what they were to learn that day, and they knew when they learned it, to what level they had to learn it.
Yeah, you should have heard the answer John got when he asked the kid what they were doing.
Yeah? Yeah, it's pretty amazing sometimes what the answers you get.
For the most part of the classes that we visited, SMOs were definitely posted. Many of them were clearly written. I mean, they had the skill and the product. What we wish that we did see more was the teachers actually referring back to the SMO. So there are times when we were trying to piece 2 and 2 together, and we were trying to not, like, well, maybe they went over it before because it feels like they did, or maybe when we leave she might, and so we're like, okay, you know what, let's just focus on the 10 minutes. And so yes, we would have liked to have seen a reference back to the SMO.
Okay. Let me have a teacher. There we go.
Hey, we went into a classroom where the students were working the stations, so there were about 7 stations. This was 8th grade. Did I say that? Ooh.
You already have it.
Each station had the objective listed for about 7th and 8th grade, as well as the instructions going around the room. So.
Nice. Good. Anything else?
I'll share since I was called out and not here.
Okay.
Right? The question was SMOs.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I like that we saw that a teacher was using the strategy that was, today we're going to learn blank so that we can blank. We'll know we have to blank. So that made it very clear to see each part of the objective. Another teacher had the objective listed above that was the actual just topic for the day. So it's topic, objective, the practice piece, which is the homework, but those weren't in the objective, but they were listed with it, which I thought was nice to go back to and kind of reference as a student as far as, hey, here's the objective, but here's just the overall topic, and here's how I'm going to practice it.
So it's very obvious what they're to learn that day and what they're going to do that day. Great.
Just kind of piggybacking on my combo, this is great. But I wanted to give kudos. I have taught combos before, and I thought the all classes were doing well, but the combo one that we had gone into, I thought she did a great job of tying everything together, and it was a welcoming environment, speaking to everyone, but then also very smooth transition, breaking out how one should do and how